This free step-by-step video comes to you directly from Haynes. You can complete more than 200 jobs on this vehicle when you purchase the complete Haynes online manual at haynes.com.
Front brake pads replacement. Fit the locking key and slacken the wheel bolts. Slide the jack with a block under the car. Position the jack under the subframe and raise the vehicle. Position axle stands under the reinforced jacking points, lower the vehicle onto the stands, then remove the jack. The wheel bolts can now be unscrewed and the wheel removed from the vehicle. Before starting the process, turn the steering wheel to improve access. Ease the caliper back slightly because this will make removal easier. Slacken and remove the lower caliper guide pin bolt. You'll need to use a slim, open-ended spanner to prevent the guide pin itself from rotating. Pivot the caliper upwards and tie it to the front suspension strut. Remove the outer and inner brake pads from the caliper mounting bracket. Then remove the pad retaining anti-rattle plates. Position a tray under the brake area. Brush any dust and dirt from the caliper and piston. Clean the caliper and the bracket. Clean the guide shims. Then clean adhesive from the caliper to outer pad contact surface. Remove the tray when cleaning is complete. Prior to fitting the pads, check that the guide pins are free to slide easily in the caliper body bushes and are a reasonably tight fit. Inspect the dust seal around the piston for damage and the piston for evidence of fluid leaks, corrosion or damage. Pushing back the piston causes a reverse flow of brake fluid, which has been known to flip the master cylinder rubber seals, resulting in a total loss of braking. To avoid this, clamp the caliper flexible hose and open the bleed screw. As the piston is pushed back, the fluid can be directed into a suitable container using a hose attached to the bleed screw. Close the screw just before the piston is pushed fully back to ensure no air enters the system. Then remove the hose clamp. If the recommended method of opening a bleed screw before pushing back the piston is not used, the fluid level in the reservoir will rise and possibly overflow. Make sure there is sufficient space in the brake fluid reservoir to accept the displaced fluid and, if necessary, siphon some off first, placing a cloth around the reservoir in case of spillage. Any brake fluid spilt on paintwork should be washed off with clean water without delay. Brake fluid is also a highly effective paint stripper. Install the lower guide shim, followed by the upper guide shim. Check that the new pads can easily slide into the caliper bracket guides. Although not essential, it is useful to apply a little copper brake grease to the edges of the new inner and outer pads in the areas which will slide in the mounting bracket, such as the end lugs or ears. Although anti-squeal shims are fitted, there is no harm in applying a little brake grease to the backs of the pads, where they will contact the caliper piston. Ensure that no grease ends up on the pad friction material or on the disc. Install the new inner and outer pads, ensuring that the friction material of each pad is against the brake disc. On genuine Nissan pads, The inner pad may have a wear indicator pin, often referred to as screech pin. If so, this should be facing upwards. Remember to peel off the outer pad backing protector from the new inner and outer pads. The caliper can now be pivoted down into position over the pads. Refit the guide pin bolt and tighten it while retaining the guide pin with an open-ended spanner. On completion, firmly depress the brake pedal a few times to bring the pads to their normal working position. Check the bleed nipple for tightness and leaks. Maintain pressure on the brake pedal and again check for leaks at the bleed nipple. Now release the steering lock and straighten the steering. Check the level of the brake fluid in the reservoir and top up if necessary. Refit the filler cap. Refit the wheel and loosely tighten the bolts. Raise the vehicle using a jack. Remove the axle stands. Then lower the vehicle to the ground. Remove the jack from underneath the vehicle. If the front wheels have been removed, set the torque wrench, tighten the wheel bolts and remove the locking key.